My name is Emily Parker. I'm 29 years old, and last Thanksgiving my own mother uninvited me, so my sister could look perfect for her boyfriend. I was standing in my garage with oil on my hands when she said, "You'll just ruin the image, Emily," like I was a stain she couldn't scrub out. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just listened to the empty dial tone and stared at the cold gray concrete floor. But that call was nothing compared to what they did the next morning. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by your own family. If you've ever sat at the edge of the table pretending you didn't mind being forgotten, this story is for you. Stay with me because what happened next wasn't just painful. It changed the way I looked at blood forever. I grew up learning early that love in our house had a hierarchy, and my name always sat somewhere near the bottom. Our dining table was long and polished, the kind my mother liked to brag about to guests, but I never felt welcome at it. Every night Mom would load Madison's plate first. Extra chicken, the crispest potatoes, a little drizzle of gravy shaped carefully like she was plating for a magazine photo shoot. Then she would slide the plate in front of her with that proud smile, the same one she reserved for Christmas photos and Facebook captions. By the time she got to me, the food had cooled. My portions were smaller, quieter. If I asked for seconds, she'd sigh like I was making things complicated. "Emily, honey, you already have enough," she'd say, even when my stomach still felt hollow. Dad sat at the head of the table like a silent witness. He never corrected her, never noticed the difference, or maybe he did, and decided it wasn't worth fixing. He would talk about Madison's grades, Madison's smile, Madison's future like she was already a finished product ready for display. And look at those curls, he'd laugh sometimes. "She's going to break hearts." Then he'd glance at me and add casually like it was a compliment, "Emily's the practical one. Always has been. Practical." That word followed me like a shadow. At school, teachers praised Madison for being bright and beautiful. I remember standing beside her during a science fair once, clutching my own project, while our parents posed around Madison's display. Mom pointed her camera at Madison again and again until the flash burned spots into my eyes. I waved from the side like a ghost no one noticed. Later that night, as Mom uploaded photos and laughed at something on her phone, I asked quietly, "Did you get one of mine?" She looked up distracted. "Of course, sweetheart." "Later, okay, I'm busy." Later never came. It never did. By 15, I had learned two things really well: how to fix a broken engine and how to make myself small. One night, rain hammered against the roof so hard it felt like the sky was trying to tear our house apart. I had just fallen asleep when Mom burst into my room, flipping on the light without knocking. "Emily, get up," she snapped. "My car won't start, and I'm already late." I dragged myself out of bed, pulling on a hoodie over my pajamas. Water soaked my sneakers as I knelt in the driveway, the rain flattening my hair against my face. My hands shook from the cold as I popped the hood, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly as thunder cracked overhead. Inside the house, through the window, I could see my parents and Madison, dry and warm, moving around the kitchen. Madison sat at the table, scrolling on her phone, wrapped in a soft blanket. No one came out to help me. When the engine finally sputtered to life, my fingers were numb and my jeans were soaked. I walked inside, dripping water onto the carpet. Dad glanced up from his coffee. "You got it running?" "Yeah." He nodded once. "Good. You're useful." It wasn't meant to sound cruel, but it landed anyway. A year later, Madison went to prom. Mom spared no expense. The dress was blue and shimmered like the ocean. When Madison twirled in front of the mirror, Mom's hands flew to her mouth like she was witnessing royalty. "Oh my God," she breathed. "You look like a movie star." I stood against the doorframe in my work uniform, grease smudged near my elbow from the garage job I'd rushed over from. "You look nice too," Mom said, glancing at me quickly, already reaching for Madison's phone to take pictures. The same month my mechanics course brochure arrived in the mail. It had been my dream to enroll. I laid it out on the counter, heart knocking in my ribs. Dad looked at the tuition and frowned. "We can't afford this." "But you just bought Madison." He cut me off with a sigh. "Your sister needs opportunities. You need to be realistic." Realistic was another word that meant not you. So I got a job instead. Then another. Then another. I worked mornings at a diner where the smell of burnt coffee seeped into my clothes. At night, I cleaned at a factory until my hands cracked from chemicals. Every paycheck I handed parts of it to my parents without question. Madison got new shoes, new makeup, money for trips. I bought ramen in bulk and learned how to survive on very little. If I complained, Mom would tilt her head sweetly and say, "Family helps family." But somehow, I was the only one helping. I didn't know it then, but this would matter later. Because once you teach a family how much you'll carry, they stop noticing the weight. By the time I moved out, I didn't tell them where I was going. I just packed my life into the back of my old truck in trash bags and drove until the ocean smell gave way to gasoline and city air. When I signed the lease for the garage, my hands trembled so hard I thought I'd drop the pen. The place was small, half-rusted, and smelled like old oil and dust. But it was mine. The first night I ate cold pizza on the concrete floor under a flickering light and cried in a way that didn't feel broken, just empty and relieved. I painted the walls myself. I fixed the sink myself, wired the lights myself. When Mr. Thomas Reed first rolled his dusty pickup into my garage, he watched me the way people do when they don't want to expect too much. "You sure you can handle this, kid?" he asked gently. I wiped my hands on a rag and met his eyes. "Watch me." He did. When his truck purred like a cat, an hour later he stared at the engine like it had become magic. "You've got something special," he said softly. No one had ever said that to me before. I carried that sentence around for weeks, like a secret, like a candle in a dark room. Then came Hannah and little Sophie. Their car died in the parking lot one afternoon. Sophie sobbing in the back seat, while Hannah looked like the world had finally run her out of mercy. I fixed it without charging them. Hannah cried on my shoulder in the middle of the garage, the oil smell mixing with the scent of her cheap lavender perfume. "You don't know what this means to me," she whispered. Maybe she didn't know what it meant to me either, because for the first time I felt needed, without being used. I didn't know it back then, but this would matter later too. Because people who are grateful don't take. They give you a place to breathe. And slowly, without realizing it, my garage became more than a building. It became a border. Between the life I survived and the life I was finally building. The first time I stayed late in the garage with only the radio for company, it felt like a quiet rebellion. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but changes everything anyway. Old rock songs crackled through the speakers, mixing with the hum of engines and the smell of hot metal cooling in the dark. Around midnight, I'd sink onto a folding chair with grease-stained hands and a cheap sandwich, listening to the building breathe like a living thing. It was lonely, but it was honest. That was around the time I found the car forum. It started as curiosity. Then it became routine. I posted photos of my work under a username no one connected to my real name. Late night soft lamplight knuckles aching while I uploaded progress shots. Comments started coming in within minutes. "Damn, that's clean. You've got real hands for this." Who taught you? No one cared who my parents were. Nobody asked if I looked the part. They only cared about the metal, the sound, the way engines came back to life under my hands. That realization dug into me deeper than I expected. Then came the charger. She was a wreck when I found her. Rusted frame, shattered lights hood so scarred it looked like it had been through war. Something in me recognized that kind of damage. It took months. Entire weekends vanished under her hood. My fingers were constantly bruised, my eyes burned from busted wiring and sleepless nights. But when she finally roared to life, the sound filled the garage like a heartbeat I'd forgotten I had. I posted the finished photos, and the internet lost its mind. Hundreds of comments, then thousands, people tagging friends, resharing, praising. One user messaged me asking if they could feature the build on a small automotive blog. Another offered to buy the car. I said no. Not because I didn't need the money, but because for once I had built something that wasn't meant to be given away. I didn't know it back then, but that decision would haunt my family later. At home, nothing changed. Mom still called only when she needed something. Madison still talked to me, not to me. Dad still measured my worth in what I could fix. One afternoon, Mom asked casually, "Hey, can you send a couple hundred? Just until Friday." I did. Then Friday came and went. Then it was, "Just this one more time. Then you don't need it as much as we do right now." Every request came wrapped in guilt and perfume. One evening, I logged into my bank account while eating cold soup straight from the can. That's when I saw it. A charge I didn't recognize. Then another. Small ones at first. A few hundred here. A late fee there. Then bigger amounts and interest I couldn't explain. I scrolled through months of transactions, my heart racing faster with every unfamiliar entry. At the bottom of the page, one line froze my breath. Cold credit account opened under applicant Emily Parker. That didn't make sense. I never applied for a credit account. My finger hovered over the screen, then tapped the bank's support number. The woman on the phone was gentle, professional, unbothered by the fact that my hands were shaking. "Yes, Ms. Parker," she said calmly. "This account was opened 3 years ago. The address on file is your parents' residence." The floor felt like it tilted sideways under me. I thought of the day Mom asked for a copy of my ID, insurance paperwork, she'd said. I hung up and sat very still in the break room chair, staring at the wall like it might start explaining things. They weren't just using me emotionally. They were using my name. It wasn't just Thanksgiving they had taken from me. It was years. I slept that night with the TV on just to drown out the noise in my head. The voices. The memories lining up in this new ugly shape. Every holiday check I sent. Every emergency payment. Every "it's just temporary." All of it had been building something behind my back. A debt I never asked for. A role I never agreed to. And the worst part? They still saw me as the selfish one. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Some truths change you not by exploding, but by settling. This was one of those truths. I smiled on phone calls. I answered texts. I pretended nothing was wrong. But inside a line had been drawn, quietly, permanently, because the girl who fixed everything for everyone else was finally starting to understand something simple and terrifying. No one was coming to save her. And if she wanted to keep anything, her money, her work, her life, she would have to be the one who stopped giving it away. The morning after my mother erased me from Thanksgiving, I woke up with the kind of heaviness that felt physical. My chest ached like I'd been carrying something in my sleep. Outside, frost lace worked the edges of my windows and the sky hung low and gray like it might collapse. I didn't have time to process any of it before somebody started pounding on my front door. Not ringing, not knocking, pounding. Each hit rattled through the walls and into my bones. I threw on a hoodie and opened it to find my parents standing on the porch like they were there to collect something I owed them. Madison was beside them in a cream-colored coat that looked like it had never known cold, and behind her stood Ryan, clean, polished, out of place in my world of oil stains and chipped paint. Mom didn't say hello. "Why did you tell people you weren't invited?" she demanded. I blinked. "I didn't." She scoffed like I'd insulted her intelligence. "Your grandmother called crying, asking what she did wrong that you were cut out of Thanksgiving. Do you know how humiliating that was?" Humiliating? The same word she used when she talked about me. Dad stepped forward close enough that I could smell his cologne. "You've always done this, twisted things so we look like monsters." "I told no one," I repeated quieter. Madison crossed her arms and glanced at Ryan like she was embarrassed to be seen with me. "It's honestly unbelievable that you'd make this about you. Again. About me." My voice almost cracked. Mom rolled right over it. "We didn't come here to argue. We came because things need to be handled." Dad nodded. "The roof. It's leaking again. You need to take a look at it today." And there it was. They hadn't come to talk. They'd come to collect. Madison added in the same breath, "And I need money. Just a few grand for decor. It's important, one messed up event reflects badly on my entire career." I stared at her. "You uninvited me from Thanksgiving yesterday?" She waved a manicured hand. "This is separate." Mom's mouth is set into a thin line. "Family helps family." That phrase landed like a brand burned into old skin. Ryan hadn't said anything yet. He stood back watching. His eyes settled on me in a way that wasn't judgmental, curious, then slowly familiar. "Wait," he said suddenly. "Emily Parker." The porch went oddly still. Madison's head snapped toward him. What Ryan's gaze didn't leave me. "You're the Emily Parker who built that midnight blue Charger? 72 models, the one with the custom interior and hand-welded exhaust." My stomach dropped. Madison barked a laugh. "You're kidding. She just fixes cars." Ryan shook his head. "No. She restores them. I've been following her work online for months." No one had ever said that in front of my parents. Ever. Dad scoffed. "You've got the wrong person." Ryan didn't blink. "I don't." Madison stared at me like I'd betrayed her by breathing. Mom cleared her throat sharply. "Well, that's all very flattering, but it doesn't change anything." It did. I felt it. Something in the air shifted subtle but real, like the gravity in the room had quietly adjusted. Dad recovered first. "Look, everything else aside, we need you to help. Your mother took out some credit we're struggling to manage. You can cover it for now." My ears rang. "Credit?" I asked. Mom jumped in fast. Too fast. "Just a little, sweetie. We'll pay you back." A little, the same word she'd used when asking for my ID. Ryan frowned. "Can I ask something?" Dad turned on him sharply. "This is family business." He didn't back down. "Is it normal for you to treat her like this?" Nobody answered. Madison snapped. "Can we not do this right now?" I looked at all of them. "No." Mom squinted. "No. But I'm not fixing your roof." The air cracked. "I'm not paying for your event." Madison gasped like I'd slapped her. "And I'm not covering any more bills." Dad stepped toward me, face hardening. After everything we've done for you, I met his eyes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Silence wrapped around us, thick and heavy. Ryan let out a slow breath. Good, he murmured. Madison's face twisted. Why are you taking her side? Ryan looked at her evenly. Because she's not wrong. My chest felt like it might cave in. Then Mom did something she'd never done before. She cried. At least something that looked like it. I don't recognize you anymore, she said softly. Where did my sweet girl go? Sweet girl, the one who never said no, the one who signed checks and swallowed words, the one who fixed everything. I swallowed once. Hard. You left her behind a long time ago. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. The cold between us did all the shouting. Dad muttered something under his breath and turned away like I disgusted him. Madison stared at her shoes. Ryan stayed. When they finally left, I didn't feel relieved. I felt watched. Not by them, by my own heart, because it had woken up, and it wasn't going back to sleep. I didn't know it yet, but as their car pulled away from my driveway, my life had just split into two versions of forever, one where I kept saving them, and one where I finally saved myself. The house felt too quiet after they left, like it was holding its breath. I stood in the doorway long after their car disappeared down the street, the cold seeping through my socks, my chest tight and empty all at once. For a split second, I almost ran after them, almost apologized for something I hadn't done. Old reflex. I closed the door instead. Inside, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was loud in its own way. Every tick of the kitchen clock felt like a reminder that something in my life had cracked open and wouldn't seal again. I went straight to my laptop. Not because I wanted distraction, but because I wanted proof. If they were going to keep calling me selfish, ungrateful, dramatic, then I was done guessing. I started pulling bank statements, screenshots, downloading transaction histories, printing things out one by one until my printer whined like a tired animal. Transfer after transfer, dates, amounts, each one connected to a moment I remembered too clearly. That time Dad said the furnace repair had to be paid immediately, or they'd lose heat. That weekend when Mom cried about her credit being a mess and asked if I could spot her just this once. That hospital visit when their insurance mysteriously didn't go through. I found everyone. And I found something else, too. An account under my social security number I'd never opened. A card billed to an address I no longer lived at. Charges from stores in their town, not mine. I stared at the screen for a long time after that. The world felt like it tilted sideways again, but this time I stayed standing. This wasn't confusion. This was clarity. I called the bank the next morning. The woman on the phone spoke gently like she had no idea she was dismantling my childhood with every sentence. Yes, Ms. Parker. The application has your mother's handwriting on file. I thanked her and hung up sobbing into a rag that smelled like oil and old metal. I still didn't confront them. Not yet. Thanksgiving came and went without a single message. I didn't get photos, or recipes, or guilt texts. Nothing. Then my phone exploded. A cousin messaged, "Not cool how you abandoned your parents. Dad's been sick, you know. Another, heard you wouldn't help with bills. Guess money matters more than family now." It was working. Their story. Their version of me. I sat there staring at those messages, my thumbs heavy, my heart a familiar bruise. I could almost hear my mother's voice behind the words. Calm, polished, wounded. I typed, deleted, typed again, deleted again. Then I closed the app. I wasn't going to fight lies with feelings. I was done with emotional labor. So I planned. Christmas Eve was 2 weeks away. I hosted a small dinner at the garage every year for the kids from the shelter and anyone who didn't have somewhere to go. This year I did something different. I printed everything: statements, charges, applications, hospital invoices. I slid them into a thick manila envelope and labeled it in big black letters: Parker Family Expenses. Then I put it on my desk, and I waited. In the meantime, Ryan started texting me. At first, it was all about cars. What paint did you use on the Charger? Did you do the welding yourself? Later, it slowly changed. Have you ever thought about selling it? You always sound tired. Do you rest? I answered honestly. For once. Madison noticed. The calls got sharp. Why are you talking to him? He's my boyfriend. Don't act innocent. I stayed calm, which made her angrier. Then she showed up at my garage one afternoon unannounced. Perfect hair, perfect coat, eyes burning. You think you've won? She snapped. I looked up from the engine and wiped my hands. Won what? My life, she hissed. I'm not taking anything from you. She laughed, thin and cruel. You've always been jealous of me. That tired lie. I shook my head. I've always been tired of you. She left crying. 2 days later, Ryan texted, I don't think I can marry into that family. My fingers shook as I read it, because I knew what that meant. The explosion was coming, and when it did, they were going to make sure it was ugly. Christmas Eve arrived quietly, carried in on cold air and soft snow. The garage filled with warm noise, laughter music, forks clinking against cheap plates. Sophie chased one of the boys around with a paper crown. Mr. Reed told a story about the winter his truck froze solid in Alaska. I was pouring cider when the garage door started rattling. Hard. Violently. Like someone was trying to break through a wall. Every voice frozen. The lights flickered. The door burst open. And my family stormed inside with winter on their shoulders and rage in their eyes. The garage door slammed against the wall so hard it rattled the glass in the windows. Cold air rushed in like it was trying to erase everything warm inside. Snow scattered across the concrete floor, melting into dark footprints beneath my parents' boots. My mother crossed the room like she owned it. You humiliated us, Linda said, loud and sharp, her voice slicing through the hum of heaters and half-played music. Do you have any idea what your relatives are saying about us? Dad followed behind her, jaw tight, eyes burning. You think you can walk away and live your little fantasy life, and we'll just smile about it? Madison pushed past him, mascara already smeared beneath her eyes. Ryan left? She cried. On Christmas. He walked out. And guess what, Emily? That's on you. Every face in the room turned toward us. The teens from the shelter froze by the snack table. Hannah instinctively pulled Sophie closer to her. Mr. Reed stood up slowly, his cane in one hand, his eyes watching my family the way men do when they're deciding whether something is about to break. I didn't speak. Not yet. Dad pointed at me. You think you're better than us now? You think this garage and your charity projects mean you're done with your family, Mom scoffed. She's always been dramatic, always playing victim. Madison sobbed louder, her words tumbling through tears. You did this. You turned him against me. You always ruin things. Ever since we were kids, you've tried to take what's mine. I stepped forward. Stop. They didn't. You abandoned Thanksgiving. Mom went on. You let everyone believe we kicked you out. You dragged our name through the mud. Dad added, People are asking questions we don't deserve to answer. I laughed. Not loud, not warm, just one short broken sound that even surprised me. Before I could say another word, the doorway darkened again. Someone stepped inside from the snow. Ryan. Madison spun around like she'd been slapped. What are you doing here? She demanded. Ryan didn't even look at her at first. He looked at me. Really looked at me. I came somewhere honest for Christmas, he said quietly. Madison's voice cracked sharply. So you're choosing her? He shook his head slightly. I'm choosing decency. Mom gasped like he'd backhanded her. Dad barked. This is none of your business. Ryan turned to him without hesitation. It became my business the moment I realized you've been treating your daughter like a credit card in a repair shop instead of a human being. The room went silent. Madison screamed, How dare you! Ryan cut her off. No, you don't get to pretend this is about love anymore. You care more about how things look than how they actually are. Mom stared at him like he'd grown horns. We raised her, young man. We fed her. We sacrificed for her. Ryan inhaled slowly. Did you? He asked. Or did you just teach her to disappear quietly while she made your life easier? Madison turned to me, furious tears running down her face. Tell him he's wrong. Tell him you didn't pay our bills. Tell him you didn't fix the house. Tell him you didn't carry all of it. Every nerve in my body went still. Slowly I walked to my desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, took out the envelope. The brown one. Dad scoffed. What is that? I came back into the center of the room and held it out. It's everything I said quietly. Dad snatched it from my hand, pulled out the papers. As he read, his face changed. Confusion, then shock, then something dangerously close to fear. Credit statements, he muttered. Medical bills. Mom stepped closer, panic flashing behind her eyes. Robert, give me that. Madison leaned over his shoulder. What is this? Ryan spoke before I did. It's proof, he said. Your mother took out credit in Emily's name. You've been spending her money for years, Mom shrieked. That's not true. Dad looked up at her slowly. Linda. She lunged for the envelope. I snatched it back before she could touch it. The room held its breath. My social security number. My name. My debt. I lifted my eyes. You didn't just use me, I said. You emptied me. Madison whispered. You kept track. No, I replied. I survived. Dad's hands shook. Mom finally broke. We were going to pay it back, she cried. It was just until things got better. Things were always going to be better for you, I said softly, because I was paying. Silence clung to the walls. Madison dropped into a chair staring at the floor. Dad ran a hand through his hair in disbelief. Mom tried one more time. You don't understand. I do, I said. Perfectly. I turned to the room, every face watching, not with judgment, with truth. I'm done, I said. My voice didn't shake. I'm not paying another bill, not fixing another roof, not sacrificing another year. You don't get to own me because you couldn't love me. Madison jumped up. You're breaking this family apart. I looked at her. This family was broken long before tonight. Ryan stepped gently between us. Stop blaming her for your failures. I walked to the garage door, pulled it open wide. Cold wind poured in. Snow swirled at my feet. I stepped aside. Leave. Mom stared. Dad clenched his jaw. Madison sobbed. Then finally, they walked out, one by one, into the snow. The door closed behind them with a heavy final sound. I stood there a moment longer. Then something in my eyes changed. Not anger, not pain. Clarity. A quiet smile curved at the corner of my mouth. And for the first time in my life, the noise stopped. For a long moment after the door shut, nobody said a word. The heaters hummed. Snow melted into thin rivers across the concrete. My heart pounded like it had just run a marathon and finally come to a stop. Then Sophie tugged at Hannah's sleeve and whispered, "Can we still eat?" The room exhaled. Someone laughed softly. Someone else wiped their eyes. Mr. Reed reached for his cider like nothing had happened and said, "Well, I'll be damned if that wasn't the bravest Christmas toast I've ever seen." The night didn't break. It bent, and slowly it reset itself. People sat back down. The music came back on low and warm. Sophie ran off with a sugar cookie and frosting on her nose. One of the teens started a stupid argument over whether Die Hard counted as a Christmas movie. I leaned against my workbench and felt something strange in my chest. Peace. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that finally fits. Later, when everyone left and the garage breathed itself back into silence, I sat alone at my desk and stared at the envelope one last time. Then I opened my laptop. I froze my credit, filed a report, downloaded forms. Every click felt like stacking bricks between my life and their reach. Ryan stopped by before midnight to help Mr. Reed into his car. He paused at the door and said softly, "I didn't know your family until I watched you stand up to yours. I didn't know how to answer that, so I just nodded." The following weeks were colder, quieter, and lighter than I remembered life could feel. Mom left voicemails. "Emily," she cried, "no one is believing us. They think I stole from you. You made me look like a criminal." I listened. Then I saved them. Not to hurt her, but to protect me, because this wasn't over. It was just beginning. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't chasing. I was building. And this time, I was building boundaries with proof. They thought they had erased me from Thanksgiving. They had no idea they had written me into my own future. In ink. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've been the one who fixed everything while no one protected you, this story was for you. You are not weak for wanting to be loved. You are not selfish for refusing to be used. And you are not wrong for walking away from people who only see your value when they need something. If you've ever been the outsider at your own table, hit subscribe. This story isn't over.